welcome to Today Matters. I'm Bob Siegel, continuing a series I began yesterday, Discerning God's Will for Your Life. And yesterday we started by saying, don't assume that God's will is diametrically opposed to your own. Some people think they should make a list of everything they want to do and then make a list of the opposite, and the opposite is God's will. Well, that's not the way he works. He wants to give you things. He loves you. You're his child. However, step two, preparatory step two, be prepared for the other side of the coin. God will at times go out of his way to ask you to do things you don't want to do. Sometimes just as a test, like a field maneuver. If you were in the military service, you go on field maneuvers because you're going to go into battle someday. In battle, we as Christians are called to take stands for the gospel, for related issues. So God will test you early on. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus said, whoever does not carry their cross cannot be my disciple. A cross was an instrument of death. So don't assume God's desires are opposed to your own, but be prepared that there will be times when God asks you to do something inconvenient. The third step, realize that God is not so concerned for external things as morality. Therefore, a lot of his will is already in the Bible. In the Bible, there are all kinds of general things that he wants us to do as Christians. In Timothy, we read, all scripture is inspired by God and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. And that means everybody. I remember when I was in college, I had a friend in college, her name was Debbie. Now, she had grown up in a church where she had been baptized as an infant, and I know Christians have different views of baptism, and I don't believe it's something we need to divide over. However, the Bible is clear that baptism is a conscious choice that we make. So I do encourage people, even if they were baptized as infants, to go ahead and get baptized again after they become Christians. Well, Debbie had become a Christian, but she came from a family who would strongly disapprove her getting baptized again, and she began rationalizing and speaking of the will of God and discerning the will of God. I'll never forget the time she said to me, you know what, Bob? Last night before I went to bed, I made a special prayer. And I said, God, if it's okay that I not get baptized, then I pray when I wake up in the morning, I'll have a feeling of peace. And you know what? I woke up the next morning and I had this feeling of peace. I said, Debbie, when the Bible commands us to be baptized, it doesn't say unless your name is Debbie. A lot of God's will is already in the Bible. More on the will of God tomorrow. See you then.